Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're in YouTube, you can see a little link down below and click on that, and you'll end up in Zoom. And if you're in Zoom, you can click on the link down below, and you'll end up in Mukana, and that's where you can ask questions and chat with other people and really just figure out what we're going to talk about. You are the producers. If you're watching, you're the one that drives the entire conversation. So we really depend on you to think of those questions all day. Your notepad, notes in your computer, wherever you want to put them down. If there's something you can't quite figure out and Google isn't really coming up strong, or even if Google might give you an opinion, you really want our opinion. And if you want to give your opinion, just get here early. So you want to be here by 6:40 a.m. Pacific Standard Time to be part of the panel. Once we start mic checks, we generally don't have anyone else join. You have to come back another day. At 6 o'clock, we open the door. So if you want to test your kit and see if things are ready, if you're a little worried about that, come in early and hang out with us. We're just having tea and coffee and talking about all kinds of things, but we'll look at your kit and give you feedback whether you like it or not. Now, at 7 o'clock, we start the actual Q&A. There's general questions, whatever you want to talk about around virtual media, around media production. All of those things are fair game. At 8 o'clock, we usually pick something that is more specific. So what do we actually want to talk about for an hour? Today, we're going to talk about Clubhouse. Slowly building up. A lot of us are experimenting with it, so we're going to trade notes, talk about what we think is working, how we connect to it, how we organize it. So that'll be in the second hour. Tomorrow we'll talk about video compression, a little primer. This isn't live streaming, but really just how to turn your stuff into H.264 or H.265 or whatever format that you need there. We'll talk a little bit about what that looks like. Thursday we're going to talk about, excuse me, event pre-production. So what all has to happen from the time that you really get the event to the time it actually occurs and all the little bits in between. Friday, we're starting a 4-part series on getting connected to AWS. So we're going to each week kind of go through building our accounts, getting set up. And the goal is by the end, you'll have a couple of Zoom rooms and or Zoom meetings and VMix installed in AWS, and you will understand how that happened. And so it opens up a whole world once we get down that path. On Saturday, of course, we have education is our second hour every Saturday. We also have another hour, 10 to 11, which is going to be Resolve. So the guys from Ripple Training, Steve and Mark, are going to be here, and they're going to answer your questions. So a lot of you have already bought their training for Resolve, the core training for 17. Your job is to go do it and then come in with questions. They're not demoing. You do the work and then they answer the questions. And so we have a special, we've added to this because the long day wasn't long enough. At noon on Saturday, we're going to build a Raspberry Pi, the Playoutbee, or is that right? Playoutbee, and the Playoutbee. And this is Jonas Tuttel talked to us about it previously, but we're going to actually build a Raspberry Pi from scratch, build it up. And there's a link there of what to buy. A guy put the Amazon link in. That's the box. If you want to do it, you can play along. You can just watch too and ask questions. But if you want to do it, that's the box we're going to assume everybody has as they build it up. And what we're going to do is set up a Raspberry Pi. We're going to get Playoutbee running on it. And that's going to be kind of the little mission for the afternoon. There's no 1 hour, 2 hour. It's when we're mostly done. It's going to be the end. This is the end of that, and that's going to be noon Pacific Standard Time on Saturday. So I think it's an interesting experiment of doing something a little bit more physical. I've got a bunch of ideas around that. It was Guy and some of the other folks came up with the idea, and I was like, oh, now we're getting to the next stage where we start all just building things. So anyway, so it should be a lot of fun. If you want to share this, the bigger this gets, the more fun we're going to have. It increases the knowledge base inside. It increases, the attention that we can get and doing what we're doing. Go ahead and share it. Use the link that I just put in Mukana. Don't use your own link. People will come in as you, and you're unique. We want to keep it that way. All right, Bill. One quick announcement. I don't know if anyone saw it before we get into the questions, or if we want to discuss it. Capturing Reality was just bought by Epic and just announced today. So Capturing Reality, if any of you we were talking about Metashape or Photosynth, that's a photogrammetry. It's probably the other big photogrammetry software, was just bought by Epic. It's pretty exciting. So for a lot of us, what that does is it basically, photogrammetry is taking photos from or LiDAR from the real world and then being able to push those models into the virtual world. So you can imagine why Epic might be interested in it. It'll be interesting to see what happens to Capturing Reality's business model. Epic's typical pattern is to buy these things and make them free. so to make sure that more people are doing it. So we could see kind of a big explosion in photogrammetry. So we're probably going to pay more attention to that as it goes forward. But unless people have questions about it, we'll just keep moving on. But just something to keep your eye on. It's a really interesting development. Did anyone see I tweeted out a drone shot, or that I retweeted a drone shot. Did you guys see that? Yeah. We have to figure out. I mean, there was a drone shot that went through a bowling alley. And I have a feeling that there was some, creative editing there somewhere, but it's pretty seamless. So anyway, if you look at my Twitter, you'll see it there. We can talk about it. We'll talk about it another day after people have seen it, but I'm going to try to get a hold of them. I really want to see if we can get them to come on, because it's a really fascinating shot worth seeing. All right, Bill, go ahead, take it away.
Okay. Our first 3 highest voted, at least as of 10 minutes ago, questions today came from James in Dublin, Ireland. And James' first one says, internet redundancy. What's the best practice to have internet redundancy if the client's ISP connection goes down? And he notes that last night his client's network went down for 3 minutes when the ISP pushed an update to their router. Ouch.
Rule number 1, never use your ISP's router. Like, that is the first thing that I do when I go somewhere. I figure out what routers are available for the ISP, and then I get rid of that one that they sent me, because they'll do things like that. You want to be able to control that. And if the ISP has access to your router or has control of your router, you're at risk of them doing exactly what that is. Yeah, go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, I guess there's a few different options, and there's pros and cons for everything. One suggestion I've used a bit is something called Speedify. And so it's just a VPN service, but it bonds connections together. So however many connections you can get into a machine. So I've done 6 connections into one PC, and it'll bond those connections together, because it's then connecting them back together at the VPN and then getting you out from there. And so it's worked really well, and it's got really good metrics, so you can see exactly which connection it's using. And you can also set it in sort of full redundancy mode, where it's pushing all of the packets through all of the connections that it's got. And so that's pretty impressive. At the end of the day, it's a VPN, and it's on a shared server at the end. You can get a dedicated server, and of course that costs a lot more, but that's another way of doing it. That works great for just pushing one way, doing a live stream. Obviously, if you're doing like a video conference, a two-way, a Zoom or something, then you're going to increase a whole bunch of jitter, and the latency increases. It still works okay, and they actually have got I guess some packet sniffing. I don't know how they're doing it, but they're working out when you are using video conference software, and they do some smarts to really lower the latency on it. So that's one option. And then other ways of having, even on the same machine, you can have multiple connections sitting there, and depending on, again, what you're doing. If one drops, it can switch to another one. Mac works quite well with that, a bit better than PC. But so yeah, it really depends on your application. But Speedify is worth checking out.
Go ahead, JJ, and then Stuart.
So when yeah, like Alex said, make sure that you're not using the carrier router, carrier device. But more importantly, if it's mission critical work that you're required to upload stuff, either, if you can, have a cloud solution. The most robust solution is using 2 carriers and making sure they're the same speed, and using a load balancer like Big Leaf Networks has one, or Riverbed, they make them as well. And if you have an instance in AWS where you're pushing to, use a real SD-WAN solution where you have on your end something like the Talari, which is now, I forget the Oracle, it's there now, Oracle, and use a Talari instance on both ends. And what it does, it replicates the packets for both streams. So if one fails, the other one picks up without having missed a single packet. So that is true SD-WAN solutions. And that makes sure that you never have a single failure in your stream. Yep. The other thing, when you have your first install, make sure that you do speed check there, and keep on running speed checks. Have QoS configured on your edges, so that your video is prioritized for the packets that are sent out. and hard code. Oddly enough, if you less than a gig, then always hard code, because that's the correct standard. If it's a gig speed, then always auto.
Good. Stuart, then Leo.
Okay, I'm just going to speak to the budget limited end of the answer. Yes, you want a second outgoing connection. Something like a 4G router is fine if you've got a landline as your main connection. And yes, you can set them up either in Windows or Mac OS as like a second network gateway. The thing is, and I need to look at Jason or James's other question here, where he's actually asking about networks on location as well, which he actually asked before this question, and it was also about.
Well, don't answer that question until we get to it. Don't answer that question until we get to it.
Both answers.
Yeah. Like, well, you can fill that one in later. All right, go ahead, Leo.
Okay.
So going from where Stuart was actually dropping off on the 4G side. Based on what we have over here in Europe, and James is in Dublin, we've only got really two carriers. One is Virgin and one is in his case it's Aircom, in my case it's BT. But what I always do is I put in a 4G router. A 4G router has a SIM card in it, and then I plug it straight on the WAN port to the connection, so that I drop out. When I do my tests, I get about 5 seconds before it will kick to 4G. So it will protect me against some eventualities. It won't protect me against all eventualities, and that's a reality of where I am.
You know, there's kind of a hierarchy to kind of think about. You know, 2 wired connections is going to be your best bet. From that, if you want to have a backup, you have a wired a wired and a microwave connection. And then after that, a wired and a cellular connection. But having 2 connections makes a big difference. Then having a router that will cascade over. I don't bond them because of what I do, mostly interactive, and the jitter is a problem. But I want them to fail over. The 3 that we've used are the PepWave, the Ubiquiti, and Meraki. And our strong preference is Meraki, but it is the most expensive of the bunch. And you know, for our system in our office, for instance, we have 2 Merakis. And those Merakis are, one is a warm spare to the other one, and they have 2 internet connections, one from Zayo and one from AT&T, and they're both the same speed. And so if the internet connection drops off, it'll go. If the hardware fails, it'll go to the other one. And so there's a bunch of different ways that we do that, and that's just for our level of mission critical connections. Those are the things to think about. Since you didn't say price, I'm just going to give you what the other options are, but those are things to think about. Chris, real quick, and we'll move on.
What's the acronym that you use for, like, it's like primary backup something?
PACE.
What is it?
PACE. It's a SEAL term for primary, alternate, contingency, emergency. And usually for most large events, I have 4 ways out. You know, so I'll try to establish. Now, if I'm doing a live stream, I'm going to have, typically those 4 are fiber, like the switch, then satellite, then terrestrial, then cellular. Those are the 4 that I'll use for high profile events.
And the E is emergency? Emergency.
Yeah, that's usually my MiFi, which I've never had to get to for an actual event, but I still have it. All right, next question.
So the second one that James asked, which I'm clicking on now to push it into the chat function, when doing the VMix in the cloud session, would it be possible to start by showing an example of end result we're working toward?
I think it's a good idea. Maybe we'll get guided. Just at the very beginning of that session on Friday, it'd be great to just show it running, which I think you can do pretty quickly.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. It's that tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them thing. And so, because the beginning is so boring that I was like, we got to razzle dazzle them from the gate. Yep. And so it was like, all right, we got to show them the push and the internet speeds. And because once you see, wow, I'm getting 2000 megabit up and down, I don't get that at home. And so that's one of the reasons. So yeah, we'll start that way.
That's great. Maybe each week we'll just show some applications of it, or think about ways to, at the very beginning, just to kind of show what we're getting to, and go from there. We'll think about that. It's good. It's a great idea. Next question.
Okay, James in Dublin's third one was networking on location. Should I run all my gear into my own switch and then have one connection to my client's network? If so, any suggestions for the switch I should use? Make, model, 1 or 10 gigahertz.
Go ahead, Stuart.
Policy-wise, yes, definitely. If you can isolate all of your own network traffic to your own system, you're in control of it, and it doesn't interfere with your client stuff. Now, in past shows on similar questions, Alex has mentioned about putting his own router in and actually segregating the networks and absorbing most of the traffic, which no doubt he will speak to better than what I can. But you could do the same thing very easily. Just make sure you're finding out where the client's actual point of presence out to the outside world is, and that's where you put your gear in and split off. The thing is, by isolating yourself from their network, you don't interfere with theirs, and their IT department can't mess with your gear at the same time, so your system will be more stable.
Doug, and then Leo.
Yeah, be careful plugging a switch into a switch. We had a very bad show where we did not talk with the IT people ahead of time, and our switch talked to their switch, and that shut our port off. We tried the next port, it shut that port off. We did 4 ports and shut all 4 off, and we had no internet, and the show was a disaster. So have a word with the IT people of the venue that you're going to use before you go and start plugging stuff in. It will save you.
Yep. Leo, and then Mickey, and then Marty.
Just related to it, make sure that your private network is not the standard 192.168.0 or 192.168.1, because you will invariably hit their networks and cause yourself no end of trouble. So try and choose something that's slightly unique, 192.168.55 or something that is not generally used, or go to the 1010, but again, change yourself to something that isn't the unique. Because I've been to venues and you literally plug everything in, and the way routing works, you can't go through with the same IP.
Go ahead, Mickey, and then Marty.
Yeah, on a similar topic, like you coordinate with the IT staff and see if you can get yourself your own VLANs for your production, so that you're totally separate from the corporate network. And regarding what speed to get, most switches now have at least 1, sometimes 2, 10 gigabit SFP plus ports. I would go with that unless you are using some sort of IP-based video transport. Then you'd want to go multiple 10 gigabit connections.
Good, Marty.
Yeah, at some point you're going to need to be interacting with the client's network, depending on where the equipment room is. I mean, if you're fairly close to where their router is, ask for a port directly to the router and ask them to set you up on like the DMZ, or guest network, which just gets you directly to the internet and bypasses their network altogether. But if you're farther from that, you'll need to go, the nearest port for access will be through switches. And then you need to pre-plan with them to get you the service that you need, as Mickey was just saying.
Yeah, and one of the things that you might want to look at is something like a Fluke Link Sprinter or a Link Runner. There's a variety of different ones that you do. When someone gives you their port, you put it on and it'll just do a ping all the way through and tell you every device that you're connected to on the way out of the building. There are some secure facilities that don't appreciate that, like the White House. But for the most part, it'll tell you everything that's connected to it on the way through. But that tells you where you're at. Now, again, the best thing to do is if there is an IT department or an IT connection, you want to get talking to them as early as you possibly can. For larger events, we hire an IT staff specialized to manage that relationship, as opposed to having us think about it. So if it's a really large event, like a Dreamforce or something, or a large event, there's a company that we're going to hire that's going to manage that connection for us. In smaller events, you want to look at, first working with an IT staff. If there is no IT staff, if you're coming out of a bar or someone's house or whatever, that's when you go, hey, why don't we have this great router that we can put right at the WAN, and then we can give you back bandwidth. If they don't have an IT staff, do what you can to gently and quietly take over their bandwidth, because it means that they don't have any wherewithal to they don't understand what they're doing. And so, and that's fine. It's not that's not their job, and it works fine, and they have a Comcast connection, and it's okay. It does what it needs to do for them, but you need to get the most performance out of it. And so, oftentimes what we do is we give the house back a cellular connection, and we keep the hard line for ourselves for a stream. And it's enough to keep it going, but not, it's for a day, for an evening. And so, depending on the size, once the building gets to a size where that's a problem, they usually have an IT staff. So you just, there's just a scale of figuring out where you fit into that and what the level of expertise is. Be careful of, the guest network, because oftentimes it's clamped down. It might have a cap of 10 megs up or something, because that's what almost everybody does. And so when you have a guest network, you just want to make sure that you know exactly what it is. And when you're in a location, what you really want, you don't always get it, is 2 internet connections that are diverse all the way to the WAN. So you want 2 Ethernet cables delivered to you that don't go through the same switch ever. They go all the way to the internet and out. That's what you request. That's what we request on every show. Whether we get it or not is up to what's available. So you just have to kind of keep that in mind. But you don't want to not ask for it just because you don't think people will do it. You'd be surprised at how many go, oh yeah, we have that, and they can do it. Might be a little bit more expensive. It might be whatever, but you can actually get it. So it's worth asking for. Go ahead, Chris.
Interesting quick side note. I think that was the reason for having 2 SM57s for the president, is that the 2 paths went back different paths. The 2 mics went different paths.
We do that with mics all the time for that reason. Next question.
Ray Franklin, who comes to us from Mount Dora, Florida, says, if I want to create a temporary VPN, virtual private network, between the host site and 2 remote production teams, what are the panel's recommendations?
Go ahead, JJ.
Radman VPN, it's free. It's nice because it creates actually a cloud solution, and that's the cheapest thing you could do. Radman.
Jason?
I really like Ubiquiti routers, the high end, not the Unify ones, because they will actually allow you to spawn and spin up a VPN between 2 clients. Alex is right. Meraki is much easier. It is straight away the best, and it's how many times more expensive, Alex?
I don't know. No,
a lot more expensive.
With the professional, at the professional level, maybe twice. But it's talking about, so what we do, like to connect to things like that, we will. I'm using, so the way I'm coming to you through my office from my house is with a Z3. It's a Meraki Z3. It's a tiny little box. And it connects to our main hub. And all I do is, once it's configured, I just plug it into any location, or you send it out to someone, they plug it into their internet, and it goes, hello, I'm here. It just connects. And so, and you can see that, you can see it. You can, if you connect it to the internet, even if it doesn't quite get to the internet, the Meraki, we can dig in and find it. So it's a pretty powerful little box. Next question. We're running out of.
Glenn and Lee's Summit, I believe that's in Missouri, says, where can we find the detailed list of stream kits that are sent out that Alex mentions?
So I'm releasing an article this week about the Stanford article, the Stanford study. It's almost done. Just doing a couple of refinements. Yeah, it's going to be a little rough. And then the next article after that is going to talk about the theory of what I think you have to approach to make a good connection. And then the third article that'll come out next week is actual breakdowns of kits that we use. So it's coming. It's just hard for me to list it all off right here, but I will be listing the different types of cameras that we use and different kind of earpieces, all in detail. I feel like the only way to kind of deal with the Stanford shenanigans is to put out a bunch of information that's actually correct. So it's something that, it's, like we just have to put something out that actually would make a difference, as opposed to people talking about skiing that have never actually skied. It's like a bunch of folks from the beach were transported unexpectedly to the ski slopes. And I'm just like, it's really cold and I'm wet and I keep on falling down. And there's people like, hey, if you get the right clothes and the right skis, it's pretty fun. And they're like, let's do a research project about how cold it is and how wet it is and how much you fall down. And they're like, you could have some, skis and those types of things. So we're going to talk about what those skis are. All right, next question.
Mark Harder, who's in the Bedford-Stuyvesant area of Brooklyn, says someone on the panel has a preferred webcam control software for the Mac that they recommend often. There are many in the Apple Store. Which one is your recommendation? And I will write it down this time, he says. We all do that.
Go ahead, John.
I think Chris and I use the same one. It's manual cam, and it's got. He
Oh,
doesn't like
I
manual
just
cam,
changed.
Chris.
I
You just
literally
changed.
just changed to what Alex uses, the webcam settings.
I
And
have
the
them both.
The reason I did is I was chasing my color. I was looking like a sunburned Oompa Loompa using the other, and I think the color looks better on webcam settings. I don't know why it didn't make any sense, but I'm now following your lead, Alex, once again.
I agree. I have both of them, and I keep on going back and forth, but I keep on coming back to webcam settings. Tony, and then Jeff.
I just want to add one more to those. I'm using all three, webcam adjust, webcam settings, and manual cam. All three of them work. And depending on what's going on, you get a good image from all three of them at different occasions. So
That's great. That's great. Jeff?
So I use webcam settings, and I've got just an interesting side question. I don't think it lets you load a LUT, and I would kill for something that lets me put a LUT in between
I have a
my
webcam.
camera that's not. No, like this camera here. That's not OBS.
Oh, I have a webcam it loads a LUT right up. It's called a Blackmagic 6K. Sorry. The problem. The issue is that the UVC controls are very low. So the fundamental problem with it is that they just don't have the controls to do that. Now, to your point, you could probably have something that took over the camera, ran it into a low gamma, like just ran it into like a low contrast image that was coming into the computer, and then have a LUT that would transform that into something that was very specific. So that would be a very interesting, way to bring flat color in and then expand it out. The problem is at 8-bit, you probably end up with some posterization or some macro blocking because of the lack of color data. Go ahead, John, and then Jeff.
I remember my issue with webcam settings is I let it run overnight one time and it ate resources like crazy.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, Jeff.
And I'll mention webcam settings has got at least the one I found the one I've been using has got a very low rating on the App Store. It's like 2.1. That doesn't mean it's not good. It works beautifully on my system.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know why it's the best one that we found so far. Next question.
Chris Fenwick, who is that? Here from Sacramento in the panel says, I can't figure out how to make a multicam with clips and compound clips in Resolve. I don't think it can do it. Does anybody have any advice? And he notes it's super easy in Final Cut Pro 10, but that's neither.
Not that he's bitter.
No.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay, so the confusion likely is that you make your compound clips in the timeline, and then it creates a clip in your viewers, your browser area, media pool, and that's where you have to make your multicam. And while we were doing this through Discord, I actually went and tested this for Chris, and I'm happy to show it at a different point. I don't want to show it.
We're going to talk later.
Footage, no good. Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent.
But yeah,
that's great.
Do you want more details, or
do you have it handy?
Can you show us? Can you?
I can. It's messy. It's messy only because one of my drives is off, which is all my media, but I can summarize it in 2 sentences.
Yeah, go ahead, do that.
Put a piece of text over a clip and make 2 of those compound, and then up in the actual media pool, grab your compound and your other clip and right click and say make multi-clip, and then it's just a question of sync.
That's great. Nice. Welcome, Jeff. Jeff starts kicking butt. All right, next question.
Guy Cochran here in the panel from Seattle says, I had a beta version of Network Whiteboard Camera enabled by Zoom support, no NDI as hoped. Further inquiry says Kaptivo. Can we take a look at Kaptivo?
What is, can you show it? Are you able to?
I don't have like the full demo or anything. I just heard about it this morning, but I wanted to show kind of the back end of what happens. Let me see.
And I
what
did a
have
poor
this
job of
feature.
that. It's Kaptivo with a K. That's if you're looking for it. I probably should have noted that.
Yeah, here's what it looks like in the back end. It just says network whiteboard camera. This is in the Zoom Rooms back end. And then when you click on it, it says this feature is in beta. Please contact your customer support team for details. And I was hoping that that was a clue to get NDI into a Zoom Room, but it wasn't that. So I asked what it was, and they said it's this. It's Kaptivo. So it looks like it's a camera that when you do a share screen, it can transfer over the network from this little box an image, and it's kind of cool looking as far as how it does it, because it's it'll do it over time. So how did the class go? Like, let's say for instance it was a math problem and you wanted to go back halfway through, you'd be able to do that. So I don't know, it's $1,200. It's a lot of money, but it seems like something kind of cool for Zoom, and it seems like this is the route that they're going for classrooms to get people into Zoom.
I just wish I could draw on the screen and just go like this and put out the equals and all the stuff there. That would be really cool, wouldn't it? Anyway, it's not nearly as expensive as $1,200. All right, next question.
Chris Widener of Lafayette, Indiana says, if you aren't allowed access to create polls for a meeting and don't have access to Makana, what is everybody using to do polling?
I think Slido is the one that a lot of people are using there. Go ahead, Leo.
It didn't even need to answer. There you go.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, John.
So we're using one for a board meeting this week, and the one that we found is by Kaspersky. It's called Polys, Polys, and everything's immutable and written onto the blockchain. So that's the one that we're using.
It's a lot of heavy lifting for a question. Blockchain.
But their interface
burning up.
Their interface is amazingly simple. And for small polls, it's completely free. So it's an interesting solution.
What's it called again?
URL. Polys. I'll put the URL in Mukana right now.
Okay. Next question.
Paul Wallace of Austin, Texas, often joins us here on the panel. My Mac Mini is great, except for one thing. I can't stack windows vertically on my LG Quad monitor. Any idea how to fix this? And he notes Guy Cochran has the same setup and may have the answer.
Guy?
Is it, I wish I could, if I had a few more moments, I could show in the Mac Mini where you just choose displays, arrangement, and then you stack them. So you basically got to take display 1 and just move it to display 2. And then in the LG Quad, you tell it where you want to arrange those two as well. Paul, I can work with you one-on-one. It's really easy to do. It's just go into your system preferences, displays, and move the display around. You can actually drag it to where it physically is. Well, in this case, what we're talking about is a 4-quad monitor. It's basically HDMI times 4. And then you can choose to take one full screen 4K, or you can choose to do 4 individuals. So Paul and I both have our Mac Minis down below is 2 quadrants of a 4-quad. Man, this would be so much easier if I just showed. Can we come back to this and I'll just...
Why don't we come back to this? Is that okay, Alex? We can come back, circle back.
A few minutes to set it up. Yeah.
Just let us know. Yep, absolutely. Next question.
Okay. Let's see. Talak Lopez, wow, that it did move it over. Talak Miguel Lopez Waterman in New York says a week or so back, Jason Basche was having some consistent level issues with his audio levels. Did a Zoom update help that, or was there another fix?
No, actually. So my chain is completely digital, and it was just a matter of powering it down, and it fixed it.
When in doubt, restart. Anyway, next question.
Now moving on to Alan Scott of New Brunswick, Canada, who says, can Playoutbee be installed on the 1 gigabyte Raspberry Pi I already have? He has a Model B+.
Jonas, I talked to Jonas about this a little bit, and he said that I think he said it can be, but what he recommends is the 4 gigabyte or the 2 gigabyte, I think. But I would definitely try it. I think he recommended 2, and of course I just went for 4. So I just was like, okay, I'm gonna get 4. So anyway, I think that you can do it. 1 may be a little chunky as far as playback goes, but that's probably a good question for Jonas. Hopefully he'll jump on one of these before we get to Saturday. Next question.
Tobias Moss of Minneapolis says, ideal device to split laptops USB-C into multiple USB-Cs.
Yeah, go ahead, Marty.
USB-C is kind of a different animal than like USB 2 or 3 even. The power requirements and capabilities are different. You can get USB 2 hubs that are like 10, 12 different outlets. USB-C tended to be closer to 4 as a maximum. And you really need to pay attention to, if you're powering devices with it, which one you get. So StarTech has several good ones, and I just put that link into Makana.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yes, absolutely what Marty said. And just one quick caveat there. Be wary of the fact that you're always going to be, you're not making throughput. So, something like this that would actually use the Thunderbolt 4/USB-C hub protocol is going to give you, a much more consistent set of bandwidth restrictions. You're still limited to the port, but it's actually going to make full use of the potential.
Next question.
Felipe Bias, our friend from Prague, Czech Republic, says, I have 10 clips. I need to render each of those clips with a watermark text that has the name of the person to avoid piracy. What's the best way to process those 10 clips for 100 different clients? And he notes, my first reaction is to use Resolve or add text overlays and then export as individual clips, but not sure if there's a way those individual clips would include the text overlays without using compound clips.
Yeah, go ahead, Grant.
So you can do it in Compressor. In Compressor, you can do a video effect, and you can either do text, add text. So it's a video effect, and then you can do either a watermark, which can be an image, like a transparent image, or it can be a video that loops, and then it will just loop over the length of the video. Or you can do a text overlay. You can just type in the text, you do the formatting, and you can position it wherever you want on the video. You set that up as a preset and pump them all out.
But you have 10 different clips with 100 different names. So it's 1,000 different clips. So you'd have to put that, that you'd have to build you have to change that name 100 times.
All the different presets.
Well, you'd set 100 presets, one for each person, and then just drag it onto them. Like you have the 10, pull them in, drag it on. It would take a little bit of work. I wonder, because I do believe there is some automator or some AppleScript services within Compressor that you could probably write an automator script that would go and say, go grab this, go grab all the names, do this thing, do the thing. I think that would be one way to possibly automate it. There was a great app that used to be able to do things like this called the Babelizer. Some of us are old enough to remember it. They could do that kind of thing pretty quickly, but it's not there anymore. Jeffrey and then Jason.
Yeah, I remember the Babelizer. That was an awesome program. Media Encoder. I know you probably don't want to get into Adobe stuff, but Media Encoder does have a watermark function to it, so you can just.
Well, it's not the watermark function that's hard. It's the taking 100 people and applying them to 10 clips each. It's the automation of that process that I think is the challenge. It's not the watermark.
Oh, so they're
done. He's got to take 100
text.
Yeah, different names. It's 100 different names with 10 clips. That's what we're trying to solve, not the watermarking problem.
Got it.
I mean, it can be, but that's the real issue in my opinion. Go ahead, Grant. I'm sorry.
Actually, FFmpeg you can do.
Oh yeah.
Which means you could script it, and you can just and you in the command line you could put the text that you want. So then you could script that out, and that would be a really easy way of doing it. You could do it with a CSV or all sorts of ways of doing that.
Jason?
And if you don't want to get into scripting, I'll remind you that Compressor will allow you, once you're done with that output workflow, you can right-click on that completed workflow, bring it right back in, and just switch out your overlay.
But again, it's the figuring out how to switch it out 100 times that most of us will sit there and spend the same amount of time figuring out how to automate it so that we never have to do that again when the client says, that was great, let's do it again. That's what you're trying to solve. Because if you figure it out, they're going to want to do it all the time. The other way, by the way, is if you deliver it to them in Frame.io, I think it burns it in. You can set, if you're in the enterprise area, it'll just burn it in for you. Jeff?
So I have 2 different ways you could probably skin this cat. First would be, it's not known by a lot of people. You can dump your set of names into Photoshop and have Photoshop build you 100 individual names, and then throw that out in whatever your NLE of choice. Resolve could take all of that. It would be really easy to say to Resolve, take each one of these and put them out as their own individual clip. The other thing Resolve has is it's got the ability to actually read and build its own subtitle information or burn-in information from clip metadata. So conceivably, this is a gross way to do it. You'd take your 10 clips, you'd rename them to the client name times 100, but then you load them into Resolve and it would automatically read the names and burn that in. It's not as elegant as FFmpeg, but it's a brute force method that's somewhere between doing it 100 times.
Go ahead, Michael, and then Stuart.
Did I misunderstand, or is that exactly one of the things that Universe can do? Didn't we just see?
Well, it's live. It's not like compressing. It's not a compressor. Maybe it could control it, but I don't know of any way to do that. Go ahead, Stuart, real quick. We're gonna move on. We're running out of time.
Just all the suggestions there sounded like they were all Mac-based suggestions with using compressor. So I'm just wondering for Grant, perhaps, would the Handbrake front end allow FFmpeg to do that on Windows?
Well, you could do a command line. I think command line in Windows, couldn't you, to do FFmpeg?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
I mean, Handbrake will do the stuff, but it won't automate it.
Yeah.
Next question.
Andy Dolph.
And we're going to move a little faster now. We're running out of time. Go ahead.
Andy Dolph, Durham, New Hampshire. Weird audio sync problem. ATEM TV Studio program out into Web Presenter, loop through to Hyperdeck Studio Mini. Web Presenter through OBS and YouTube audio is 130 milliseconds behind the video. With the Hyperdeck, it's 17 milliseconds behind the video. No delay added in OBS. Any ideas?
Go ahead, Jason, and then Mickey.
I would be dead sure that your reference input on the TV Studio and the reference input. Actually, wait, the Web Presenter doesn't have a reference input, so it's got to be something having to do with the universal clock. But there is a reference input on the Hyperdeck, so be sure you're daisy chaining all of the references so that you don't get that bizarre tiny little shift. And OBS is unpredictable.
Mickey.
Yeah, just the last thing that Jason said, I would tend to take a closer look at the OBS and see what's happening there.
If you're using OBS on the Mac, it's probably OBS. it's just a dumpster fire on the Mac. So it's a really great application for the price on the PC. On the Mac, it's just I gave up on it years ago just because I just finally was like, there were so many idiosyncrasies that I just was like, okay, I'm done. Like I'd rather pay money than to spend the time on this junk of code. So it's clearly primarily developed on a PC and then ported to a Mac. And it feels like that every day. All right, next question.
From Tobias Moss in Minneapolis. Have people checked out this webcam eye contact solution? Any confidence in it? But there's a link to a Kickstarter, so I'm not sure if it's a real thing yet.
Kickstarter.
Remember Kickstarter? I haven't seen
Sorry. We should test it. It'd be good if someone got it and gave it a shot. I mean, a lot of us have done versions of this where you move move a webcam to it. My guess is the webcam won't be very good. It's just really hard to get a really good 1080p camera that isn't Logitech. So for any kind of reasonable price, especially less than $100. Go ahead, Jeffrey, real quick.
Two things that I've noticed with this. First of all, there's the screen right there. So it puts it in the middle of the screen. So it's really dependent on what that screen is going to produce. That could blow out your camera right there. Second of all, that clip is right on the screen. So I could bust your laptop screen pretty easily. And $95, it's got a decent price to it.
My guess is it's got a soft back somewhere there. Next question.
Does that help when your little brother comes in and slams?
Yeah, exactly. No, that'll be it. Yeah, that'll be the end of it. All right, next question.
Matt Wood, Newcastle upon Tyne. I'm looking to upgrade my audio from a USB mic, looking for a simple setup to bring an XLR and XLR Mini along with audio from an ATEM Mini. What would the panel recommend?
From an ATEM XLR and a Mini.
Sounds like he needs a little mixer that has a USB out and takes both XLR and XLR Mini in to get it into an ATEM Mini.
Jeffrey?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Something like an Icicle, or JJ's putting up, got a little one channel right there that he's putting up with USB. That would probably be your best bet. I also use the IK Multimedia iRig Duo, which is a smaller unit as well. And that you plug the adapter in the XLR, of course, the mini XLR into that, and go from there.
I don't find that putting it into cheap mixers, like if you're going from USB, your USB is going to actually be cleaner. Then it's not the USB mic. The nature of the USB mic does not make it worse. I mean, you can get some relatively good, like I think the AT2020 or whatever is a pretty good mic. It's going to be cleaner going USB to the computer than you going through a less expensive mixer. Those low end Behringer mixers are going to add a bunch of analog noise to it. And so it's actually, while it's XLR, going out, it's not going to improve the quality. You want to go from a USB mic to a really good mixer because the USB mic is going to actually, if you're going to step up on the mic, you're going to want to step up also on the mic quality that you're putting into it, and then into the interface that you're driving it through. And you want to know that interface is really, really quiet. And most of them, in my opinion, under $200 are not. Chris, and then Jason.
I wonder if the good people at Zoom.us have considered working with the Zoom audio company and getting them to build the perfect Zoom interface thing kit.
I don't think Zoom is the one you'd want to partner with, and I don't think we should worry.
I'm just saying it's natural from the name. That's all.
Yep. Jason?
Maybe they considered suing each other for copyright infringement and then gave up on that. Or I'm sorry, trademark. Anyway, I am such a big fan of the Allen and Heath Z. The smallest Z will do you. Just understand that a mic is like a lens. It depends on what you put it on. It depends on what's in front of it. It depends on the whole thing. So getting a good this and a bad that is not it's not going to improve.
Yep. Mickey, and then Marty.
Yeah, essentially, Matt, what you need is an interface if you want to get XLR into your computer that turns your analog sources into a digital, typically USB connection. There are loads of them at different price ranges. You didn't mention the price range, so you could get $100 ones from Shure, from Focusrite, and you can go into the multi-$1,000 ones from a bunch of manufacturers. In terms of getting XLR Mini, if it's a standard 3-pin TA3 connection, you can do that with a simple cable adapter. But if you start talking about, say, TA4 or TA5 connectors, like say for the 4 microphones that are meant to go into Shure transmitters or Lectrosonics transmitters, then you'll have to get a more expensive adapter. It's not just a regular cable.
Go ahead, Marty, and then Guy. Real quick, we're going to run out of time. Go ahead.
Sure, exactly what Mickey said, and I want to agree with you, Alex. You can get some really good USB microphones. So if it's just the quality of the mic you're worried about, just look into that. But if you need to add additional sources into your mix, then you can get some decent interfaces. It doesn't have to be a cheap mixer. Some of the interfaces from Presonus or others can do really well, and they can come with software mixers as well, so you can adjust balance.
Go ahead, Guy. No, move on.
Yeah, I'm wondering what his workflow is. If you can take an XLR input on one of the HDMI-based cameras, that's always a nice way too, because then you can do audio follows video, and it sounds like he wants to mix the audio that is coming in through those cameras. So we got to relook at the question and just understand that I think he wants to mix too. So if we bring in a USB device direct, how's he going to mix that stuff? Unless there's a software app or some kind of DAW or some way to mix the ATEM Mini audio with the Behringer or whatever device. So probably gonna have to suck it in through one of the mic inputs through the 1/8 inch. So that's probably more the thing that he's looking for, as a way to take the audio into mic input 1 or mic input 2. So that's a different story. But yeah, lots of good answers. And Curtis Judd actually has a really good video on the Rodecaster using that to pipe it in. So that's another option.
All right, we're going to go, and just a reminder, we're running out of time, so answer quickly. Next question.
Paul Wallace of Austin, Texas. Would I be better off with a 50-50 megabits per second commercial fiber over my residential copper gigabit 40 megabit per second connection? Spectrum has a pandemic deal to get 2 months free.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yes, absolutely, because of the way that fiber has to be wired directly into the node instead of being serialized, along a daisy chain.
Generally, commercial fiber also comes with a higher uptime than your residential. Your residential is, we guarantee that we'll probably do something that's somewhere in the vicinity of that, rather than a commercial tends to be you're going to get within 5 megabits per second up and down of that bandwidth. John?
I would question the differential in price. My commercial connection at my office was $2,000 a month for gig symmetric, and then my house connection's 1 gig 40 up, and it's $100 a month.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Go ahead, Leo, and then Sky, real quick.
I can't say about how it is in the US, but in the UK, it's a lot to do with the ping time as well. So the delays I'm on Virgin Fiber here. That's 9 milliseconds. The nearest I can get to that on copper is somewhere in about 40 milliseconds.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Sky.
My question is for Guy with regards to Ziply, as he is using that service. I'd be curious about his upload, what he's found with that up in the Northwest.
I'm getting 120 over 120 with the Ziply, and 1,000 on Comcast down and 50 up.
And that's with the business accounts or the residential?
This is home. Business is a totally different ball game. I'll show you that stuff offline.
Okay, copy that. Ziply
Next
home.
question.
Thank you.
Yep. Don't divert questions when we're at the end of the hour. Next question.
Craig Gibson, Washington, D.C. How do you handle streaming to Facebook and YouTube for clients? I created a Facebook account for my business specifically to stream client content. Just as I was starting a client stream, Facebook decided to suspend my account for, quote, violations of community standards. I don't use this account for anything else, and I'm not streaming anything ugly. So what happened? Any idea?
Go ahead, Jason.
I don't think the scenario that you're putting forth has anything to do with the actual question that's posed. In this case, you have to play by Facebook's rules in order to stream on Facebook. And what specifically it is, I'm not sure if you'll ever even know. Read their terms and conditions. It may very well be that the account for the business is way too new or not associated correctly or not verified correctly. It could be any number of things. As far as streaming to multiple destinations, Restream.io is the easiest thing in the world.
Generally, when we're streaming, we stream through the client's account. So we're made managers of those accounts, either an editor or a manager of those accounts, as opposed to streaming through our own service. Because the problem is that they have claimed the content that you're streaming out. So if they have posted it in their feed and then you're restreaming that, it could be a copyright claim that even they don't know about. So they don't have to do anything once they put it up there if they go through the claim process. This is on YouTube and Facebook. So you can actually you need to be on the same account that's sending it out. In addition, it's not good for them to have the content pop out somewhere other than their own Facebook community. So yeah, in general, what you'd want to do is you want them to make you an editor in Facebook or a manager in YouTube, and then you and just those will give you the rights you need to generally start a live event through there. Next question.
Darija, it looks like Test Faye of Durham says, have you tried to sing happy birthday using one metronome starting together with a countdown? Wonder if it'll improve the latency.
So no, I did one where I had Memo Live and I was actually putting up the words in order, and it actually got pretty close. And I realized that we would actually probably get good at it if we kept on doing it that way. The problem is the beauty of it is how bad it is.
We embrace the awful.
It's not about trying to make it. I realized as it got better, it actually was less cool. It was kind of like, okay, well, we'll get really good at it and we'll sing in harmony and everything else. But then it's just like a thing. The fact that it is just this horrible train wreck is the part that it makes it so special. So and that's what I learned really quickly.
100% agree.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's why we don't make any attempt to make it better. All right, next question.
Michael J of New York City says, hi, Alex. Can my coworker is stuck in a hotel with terrible internet. He needs a faster way to upload audio files from his MacBook Pro. Any suggestions?
Starbucks. Starbucks. Starbucks has a fast connection. I know where every Starbucks. I have literally in the back of my lower brain just collects Starbucks locations. So I can always tell you where the nearest Starbucks is, and it's not because of the coffee. I don't really drink their coffee anymore. It's just for the internet. Go ahead, Leo.
So we talked about it earlier. 4G routers. My 4G router, I get around about 80 on it now in the UK.
Yep. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
If you got cable internet, if you got AT&T internet, you should download the app because they'll give you hotspots of where to go to get a faster internet connection.
Yeah, go ahead, Marty, and then Stuart, really fast, 15 seconds.
I would just try your cell phone.
Yeah. Go ahead, Stuart.
Broadband.
Question asks, my coworker is stuck in a hotel. Can we assume that they're doing hotel quarantine of some sort and can't leave and go to Starbucks, which I know would suck.
You don't have to go.
Coffee is bad.
You don't have to go into Starbucks to get the internet connection. Just so you know, I literally.
If they can't actually leave the hotel, what are their options?
Where in the world can you not leave the hotel though? I mean, I don't know what the
Canada.
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 Okay.
If you travel into Canada, even as a Canadian citizen, they quarantine you.
So if you're quarantined, you have your phone or the hotel. That's all you got. All right, Mickey, real quick.
Yeah, just in case this is just plain like a dialogue, just speech. Check if the recording is probably done in dual mono. If so, you can strip one of the channels out and end up with a file that's half the size.
Next question.
Ramesh Lanej of Colombo, Sri Lanka says, hi, everybody on the panel. Have any of you guys experienced using any CG software, CG solutions remote in the cloud or anything you'd recommend? I've been trying things like Caspar CG, Node CG, etc. for a while, wondering if there are alternatives the panel would know about. Thanks.
There are a lot of options. Caspar CG is probably on its way out because it was mostly based on a Flash infrastructure, and I don't know if they've really made a lot of movement on that. Mostly just for authoring. I think they might have been going to HTML5, but I'm not sure. There's a lot of options at different prices. If you're on a PC, I mean, so how I started was using presentation software like Keynote. You can use PowerPoint as well. You can actually build little graphics with those and use LumaKey and actually key them over top of your graphics, and it works great. So to get started, after that, you can start looking at more dedicated, software like QLab, MIDI. That's MITTAO. Is that right?
MITTI.
MITTI. So MIDI, Pro Presenter, QLab all have the ability to do key fill out. That's what you're eventually going to want, is to have both a color and an alpha channel going out. And then you have, Blue Effects is starting to get into like real, and then Softron makes a series of graphics on the Mac. Mimo Live will also do key fill outs. So those are, and then I think that VMix will do it as well. I'm not sure. So you can start to scale up. There's lots of different pieces of software. And then when you get to the top end of things, you're talking about things like ROS expressions and then VizRT. Like that's when things start to get, $70,000 a unit. So it starts from free and just keeps on scaling up. And what you get as you keep on building up is more. Now, the other thing to know is that if you're really looking for CG, like 3D, there are people using Unreal Engine for free and building their graphics inside of Unreal Engine, doing key fill outs. And Unreal Engine has a unique thing that it does 2997 out of a card. So you can build some really impressive 3D graphics that are your lower thirds and everything else in Unreal, and then output them from the computer. And that software is actually free if you're using it for that case, because there's no licensing. Doug, real quick.
Yeah, we use a software called CharacterWorks, and Jeff Keithley is a rep for that. And yeah, there is a big jump between graphics, because we looked at an expression. Yeah, it's a $42,000. Yeah. And so this is like $2,500, but it is a key fill or NDI if you want to go that route. But
and the big thing that you're looking at is, do you want it to be able to generate a bunch of things all at one time semi-automatically? Like I want to drop a bunch of lower thirds in and have it all appear. Or are you okay building it? If you're okay building it, then there's lots of options that you can build out there. Next question.
JJ McKenna of Santa Venetia here on the panel says, after learning from Ray about color science, has there been a process of showing a QR code represented as an autostereogram in the background to identify a version of a watermark?
How would you use a QR code as a stereogram?
You wouldn't. I mean, you create a stereogram and have a QR code as the original object, right? You can use anything as a stereogram, right? Any image can become a stereogram as long as it's photographed, and there's stereogram software that can produce that. So I'm just wondering. I don't know.
Yeah.
So you're saying an indivisible thing, or invisible thing that you put on the screen that somebody could shoot with a scanner, like a phone, and take them to someplace?
So I'm sorry, too long a question.
Okay, all right.
Tomorrow.
We'll come back to that. We'll think about that. Yeah, that's a beginning of the hour question.
Yeah,
go ahead, Jeffrey. Yeah.
I will say that QR codes, you can work around QR codes to do something similar. So the QR code's still going to be flat, but you'll be able to make it pop out as it goes. Maybe that'll.
Next question.
And it was the one we postponed later that Guy was going to work on, and I don't know if we had time to deal with it. My Mac Mini is great, except for one thing.
Do you have it?
Here it is. It's basically just, here's the quad split, and then here's the Mac display on the M1, and basically all you're going to do is open that up and drag that to where it's stacked to where you want it, either below, above, or side by side, and then you change that input to however you want it to be. With using the remote control, you just press input, and you can assign that USB or HDMI input, and that's that.
Nice. Next question. Is that it?
That's it for the non-Clubhouse.
Look at that. Only just a little heavy.
Guy, that doesn't answer my question, though.
All right. We'll have to come back to it. We're over time. All right. Now we're going to shift gears to Clubhouse, and so I thought it'd be worth discussing it. We're probably going to come back to it, as long as it keeps growing. One of the things that I think is important for us to do is to keep track of trends, even though some of those trends will end up being dead ends. Clubhouse may succeed, may turn out to be a dead end. They definitely have everybody's attention. So there's a lot of people looking at, like what would I, could we build something, whether it's Facebook or other folks of an audio platform. The irony, of course, of all of this is that most of these channels had an audio version that they either had in R&D or they even announced and then decided not to do because they didn't think there was a market for it. So both Google and Facebook kind of went down that path in years ago. And I think that part of the thing is I think they couldn't figure out how to monetize it with advertising. So I think that was the, like if people start listening to things all the time, they're not looking at anything, and then the ads aren't nearly as fun because the only way to do ads inside of audio is to talk about them. And so it's just a different issue. So I think that now they're excited because obviously Clubhouse is getting some traction. So everyone's trying to figure out what to do there. Or they give up and buy it, but it's not starting to get pretty expensive. So I guess the question I have as we start to kind of go down before we start getting to the questions here is for the panel, where do you think it's going? Do you think that Clubhouse will survive? Do you think that it will be, what do you think makes it special? This is just general observations. The first time we've kind of dug into it. So I just want to kind of talk through that first. Go ahead, Bill, and then Sky, and then Chris.
So there's a couple of things as I've been exploring. I haven't spent much time on Clubhouse, but I've tried to listen a little bit every night. And the two things that it's not impressed me, but have struck me so far. Number one, as the audio only process, it has an amazing attachment reach. People who used to love, I think, theater of the mind. And I know my wife has been just fascinated listening in on conversations because it's something she used to tell me. I do that in restaurants. I try not to, but I do enjoy eavesdropping a little bit if somebody's having a conversation and they're being too loud and I can hear them. It attracts my attention. So I think there's something fundamentally interesting about it.
That's why, by the way, if you ever see me walking and talking on a phone, that's exactly why I do it, because I was trained to not stand and talk on a call. So I walk all the time, and it's mostly so that someone eavesdropping only gets a couple words.
Exactly. It's a human thing. We're interested in what other people are saying if they're around us. The other thing that was interesting, I was on a Clubhouse thing, and it shall remain nameless, but The person who was facilitating, I thought, did a really good job. Now, first of all, they were annoying.
Why, thank
me.
you. Thank you.
No, it wasn't ours. This is my survey of it. There was a lot of hipster talk, and every single video reference came back to Instagram, and it's not the world that I normally work at. But inside all that hipster talk, the fellow who was running it pulled people in brilliantly. So the people who were just lurking and not on stage, he had a way of engaging them that I just thought was genius. And it reminds me that I can't turn off listening to voices that annoy me just because they annoy me. Sometimes they're really good at stuff.
Good, Sky, and then Chris.
I just think we've been in communications with other humans since being around the campfire. So is this the new iteration of a campfire? And it's called a clubhouse for a reason. I assume it was like a place that people would gather. I mean, restaurants, conferences, people that are gathering. And again, I borrow Chris Fenwick's affinity group aspect of people that are interested in a particular topic. And Bill, to your comment about the language of the group that's being drawn together, they either have that affinity or language, that lexicon in the business terminology, or they're learning it or want to learn about it. Now, what I'm also, the moderation aspect is something I've seen almost instantly. And I don't know if this is coming from the gaming world and the Dungeons and Dragons history, that people have, okay, we have to have a leader to be able to follow so we can all go down a path together. But it's pretty fascinating to see the etiquette of people that can only listen to each other evolve almost physically instantaneously. Now, to your question, Alex, will it be sustainable? I think my question to you is, you observed the monetization was its failure from a corporate instance. Now, this is such a low barrier to entry. And as you pointed out, maybe we don't need to make a lot of money, maybe, or we, whoever they are. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Good, Chris.
First of all, I have no problem turning off people that annoy me. Also, I feel that
thank you,
Clubhouse
Chris.
is kind of in that when Twitter was just SMS stage, like they clearly have to figure some things out. I was listening to something the other day, and the moderator was brutally rude when he couldn't get somebody to ask a question fast enough. And I was like, oh, that's just a horrible experience. You know, the way you use Mukana in it, it totally helps. It needs to get past that Twitter SMS stage, is my thought.
Well, the hard part is that when it comes to Q&A, is that we usually recommend, I was just in a meeting yesterday, actually, we recommend very quickly, they're like, we could bring people up and they could ask questions. And I'm like, that's a horrible idea. like as someone who sat there watching people drone on in front of a microphone in a large crowd over and over and over again, you get a one magical moment and 9 duds. Like, just, like that's the math, and so, pushing it into a text format and I think that they're going to, I think they'll figure out that, oh, right, everybody's conversations go much faster when we just limit it to 300 characters. That's go ahead, Jeff, and then Leo.
So I think it's really fascinating because it's a zero friction interface. You can go from, you don't have to worry about your makeup, your audio, boom, you're in the room. There's a high celebrity attention. I've seen I saw Malcolm McDowell is on Clubhouse. And if he goes into a room, I just want to hear him for his voice. My biggest concern is the snake eating its own tail. How to get more Clubhouse, Instagram followers, how to make $1 million. Those things always show me a sickness in a social network.
Go ahead, Leo, and then John.
So things really quickly. First of all, I think the tech is good enough with it at the moment. In other words, the audio quality, how they've got it balanced when you are listening or when you're speaking, works. Very similar to how Zoom took over at the beginning of the pandemic, because it actually worked. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I think there's a big market that's appeared because YouTube and Facebook, you cannot now listen to those when you are mobile. The minute you lock your phone, you're lost. And we've lost that. We've suddenly lost an ability to be able to listen to things when we're on the go, even if that's just walking. And Clubhouse, you can. And in fact, Clubhouse literally doesn't turn off even when you get a call. It literally stays playing all the time. So I think they've made an option there that's going to work.
And, we backed away. We started testing it and then we backed away mostly because I just needed to figure out the infrastructure. But we are going to, figure this out where we can stream to Clubhouse all the time. Oh, now that we have Clubhouse, in fact, now that we have our own, whatever is club, Mickey, just letting you know that you could stream to Clubhouse, like to the club, I believe. It doesn't have to be me anymore. So we could figure that out. And so anyway, so that's, I think that you're right. And I think that what's interesting is that I think that you could actually end up with it could explode as COVID pulls back a little bit and everyone's driving. They may not go back to, to podcast as much as they go back to live conversations that are happening while they're, the drive time becomes a whole new thing. Go ahead, John.
I'm super bearish on Clubhouse. I just froze for some reason. I've been involved with social media networks for 25 years, all the way back to White Pine and CUC You hit the nail on the head, Alex. Monetization on this, there's very little surface area on their interface for advertising, and they're certainly not going to integrate any sort of audio ads into this thing. What you're seeing now is you're seeing hype from Andreessen Horowitz. So all of the momentum they're getting now is Andreessen Horowitz pumping this thing to the moon. I guarantee you their attrition rate is significant. And it's either going to be acquired into an ecosystem that has other revenue streams, or it's going to die 1 year or 2 years out.
Well, and I think that the other thing is just it really is not a complicated. They built it on top of a platform that's relatively easy to use and build. And so I do think that I'm not too worried about advertising. I think that advertising is kind of on its way out. And so I know that sounds crazy, but I think that we're going to see more subscription and organizational, like basically organizations using their media content as marketing. So media as marketing, content marketing is going to become a bigger and bigger and bigger, as well as subscription services. And between those two, they're going to squeeze most of advertising into nowhere. Because people are just, subscriptions, and they're either subscriptions or they're watching something that's sponsored by the company that's making it, or a group or a series of partners. So I think that I'm not too concerned about where they're, where they're going there. But I do think that if they don't evolve the quality of the conversation quickly, they will get run over by the bigger players. Jeffrey, and then Paul, and then back to Leo.
I'd like to talk about the company for a second. The company is actually called Alpha Exploration Company, and their CEO and co-founder is Paul Davidson. He was a Stanford graduate from 2007. He's worked for Google. He actually worked for a company that got bought out by Pinterest. It was location-based products, and then of course he started another company, I think it was, and then of course then he went into Clubhouse from there. So everything kind of does point to the fact that it might be a product that could eventually be for sale. And I have a feeling that this guy has the brain power to know when things are going to be running like a train and where the stops are going to be from there.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, it's like adult king of the hill in the big rooms there. You have to claw your way. You might wait for 5 hours to get 30 seconds, and you claw your way up and you say your 30 seconds, and then you get dropped back down. Now, there was a Clubhouse meeting of the ATX. Josh Baer at Capital Factory started it with Mike Maples, and they had Michael Dell, and they had all these celebrities, and it went from 0 to 3,000 people in 5 minutes, and it was awesome. And you have to, if you pick through all the hype, and the Get Rich Millionaire Club or Be a Billionaire Club, you can find some real gems on there.
I think the hard part that I've had so far is that I'd rather listen to our post show. Our post show sounds better and is more organized than most Clubhouse talks, and so that's the hard part I have, is just that it's so badly run. For most of the ones I walk into, I'm just like, wow, this is really like aimless, and then I leave. And so and even when ours are aimless, they seem to be more focused than theirs. Maybe
they had one the other night there was some space people that were like, one guy had actually built the lander that's on Mars. He had it. He had it in his backyard, so he knew everything about the lander. And and there were several other people on his level. And if you really pick through and you find these gems, you can find some pretty incredible stuff on there.
You just have to pick through a lot of dirt to find them. Go ahead, Leo, and,
Yeah,
then,
you
and,
do.
then, and then Leo, and then Chris.
So one thing I think I should have added is that the legitimacy that you actually have to be seen, you know, that you can't fake yourself in there is quite an important part, I think, at the moment.
Yep.
The fact that you are registered by one other person there. But I also note that you have a club in Clubhouse, but obviously we're not all members because you only invited us.
I don't even understand how it works yet. We'll talk about that because so someone said you should make a club, so I made a club. I made a request, and then it said, okay, we'll let you. And then they said everyone can make a club, so I quickly got in there and made the club. And then it gave me some options, and I clicked on yes, 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 yes. I don't know what the mechanism is. We'll talk about that. Well, Chris and then Bill, and let's talk about that because I don't understand. Like, part of the reason we're doing this is because I don't understand it. Like I don't understand. Like, what am I supposed to do next? You know, now that I've done this, I've clicked.
Is this the club that we all want to be members, but if you invite us, then we don't want to be a member of?
You know? Exactly. So I got to figure out that next piece of it. I'm gonna do Wednesday. My goal is just to do I created the club, and part of what happens is I've been doing this for a long time, and one thing I've learned is when a new social network comes out, you immediately jump up there and you claim your name. You know, so you get your name very quickly, and then you start building a following on it, no matter what. When you're some kind of influencer. I'm a very small influencer, but you very quickly claim it, and then you start building following because you don't know if it's going to go well. And if it goes well, you'll really wish that you had been in there really early. Like I had played with Musical.ly and then played a bit with TikTok, but not very hard. And if I had done what I know how to do right at the very beginning, I could go a lot further. And the same thing with TikTok. I kind of effortlessly, or not TikTok, but Twitter. I kind of effortlessly built up enough following that it's useful, and so but that's from early adoption. Go ahead, Chris, and then Bill.
I was wondering if Paul could meet with me later and teach me how to manage my life so that I have a spare 5 hours to sit around and talk for 30 seconds on somebody's Clubhouse.
Oh yeah, sure, Chris.
Rental properties.
I'll bring you up to speed on that later.
Yeah. Bill,
you have a life, man.
Bill and then Sky.
I think in the early days of these social things, there's also a very powerful thing, which an individual who encounters it says, and it's inside your own head, the I too can be thing. And you listen to these people, and some of them are really strong and really have articulation and can get a point out. Some of them are not. And you just know that everybody listening thinks, well, I have an opinion on that. I too can be part of this. And it is hard. It's what we experience here. We've always been, anybody can come in, but the barrier to entry is just high enough that people are a little nervous about joining office hours for the first time. Yeah. And so getting that balance right, anybody can be a part of it, but it's still not just anybody can be on it, is a hard thing. And I don't think Clubhouse has quite gotten it right yet.
That's the feeling I get when I stood on the side of a golf tournament and I'm looking at all of these. I too can be that guy out there on the golf course, or that person out there. And it's like, no, you can't. But you can wear the club, you can wear the outfit, you can buy the clubs, and that's what everybody really wants. But Alex, to your point of the content, yeah, there's time for fluff and frivolity, but your discipline of protein is a unique differentiation that we're seeing against all of the sugar and cotton candy. But the discipline is a value.
Well, I think most hosts who host things have ADHD, right? I mean, almost all of them. Like if you sit down with a host I've had dinners where there's all hosts at a dinner, and it is chaos. The conversation is changing like 40 times a second, and we're all like, and you can only remember how you got there because they just bounce. Everyone just bounces off of each other, and I think it's almost a requirement to be short. The key with being a good host, I think, is to lose interest in the subject before the audience does, and so you're constantly moving the conversation. I'm bored. Let's move. Like I'm bored with this, and I had the gift of growing up with a father that, if you weren't interesting in about 30 seconds, he would still stare at you, but he wasn't listening anymore. So
you get
so
that
you learn-
glazed. Does he get that glazed eye look?
Yeah, and then
it's just like
and then
gone.
as he got
Yeah.
older, he looked at you less and just said, "Okay, I gotta go." so it was incredible training on being kind of moving things forward. You had to
So
really
to your alpha
compact it.
male
So
your
it's-
alpha male thing was when Madeline talked about when David Letterman and Graham Kerr were on camera at the same time, and it's a YouTube video to go
Right.
watch. It was a train wreck because they were both used to being in
Well,
control and being in power, but it was
yeah.
awesome.
So anyway, so it's one of those things that I think that it's one of the challenges. Anytime you see any whether it's podcasting or Clubhouse or anything that's easy to get into, a bunch of people think they can do it, and then they just tend to drone on a bit. And I'm still prone to drone on about something I think that I get excited about. But I think that's the challenge is to figure out how to nurture that conversation. And that's the part that when you have a whole bunch of people who haven't done it that jump in, they have a hard time doing it. Let's jump to the questions. Next question.
Okay, our first one comes from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. Clubhouse, I'm trying to do a Clubhouse show on Friday at 6 p.m. Central called ATX News Club with Austin Tech News. Any idea on how I could build an audience and what the ground rules are for simulcasting to YouTube, Zoom, Facebook, Instagram, and Vimeo?
I'm pretty sure that, yeah, go ahead, Leo.
Well, we had a little bit of a chat about this last night. The Clubhouse have already started issuing and saying that they've had data breaches, soft breaches, where people are taking their content and putting it out to another platform. They're calling it soft breaching. I think that's what they're telling it. They don't. The rules of being in Clubhouse is you are not allowed to take anything that's originated in Clubhouse and put it outside of Clubhouse. It doesn't. I don't think it matters if you originate something like this and push it in, but you can't take something where you're so for example, Alex was on Clubhouse and I listened to him outside. I think that's when you break the rules.
And it actually, I believe one of the things we were playing with is, can we get a two-way conversation where someone from Clubhouse can talk into Zoom while we're doing our session? And I realized we can. We figured that how to do it, but it's against terms of service. And so really, if we start broadcasting to Clubhouse all the time, it will be us broadcasting to Clubhouse. So that's because our show is so much like a Clubhouse, except a little easier to run. That I think that it'll make sense, and it'll give, as Mickey has pointed out, the technology. It's more present than our web page to listen to. So I think that we could theoretically end up with a bunch of listeners in Clubhouse if we did it every day. So we're going to work on that soon. Next question.
Jeff Greenberg here in the panel from Philadelphia says, what are the key utilities or third-party apps or websites to complement your Clubhouse use? And he notes clubs, profiles, and ring around your picture.
I'm the worst person to do that because I don't do any of those things. Like if you look at my little profile, it's like a picture of me and I do complex events. Like that's and so I'm a big fan of speakeasies. If you haven't noticed, go ahead, Jeff.
I just want to provide just a hair's worth of context. What I'm finding is the target's moving so rapidly. People are going, oh, you should have a ring around yourself that means something, or text that you're listening and you don't want to be invited on stage. And I'm just not finding a good set of tools / resources in a single place of like, this is a great app. This is a great website.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm still groping through it. I mean, I think the one thing we have figured out is number one is I'm only adding, when we do our Clubhouses, I just add panel members from here. So I have an easier time with it. I don't have to figure it out. I know that person. The other side of that is also that I've kind of gotten good at that whole little blinking thing. If someone mutes and unmutes their phone, I know that they want to say something. If someone opens their mic, I kind of know that they'd like to say something in the panel. We're not bringing random people up mostly because I'm always like, I don't know if that's going to work, and I think that's actually what brings a lot of Clubhouse conversations down for me is when they bring a random person up who, doesn't know how to, build a question.
If you weren't aware of it, the turning on and off the mic actually is applause. At least I learned that. In the panel though, usually it means I want to say something to that. I mean, that's what somebody else that I was listening to said. And I've onboarded like 30 people at this point. I find it really fascinating that they've got their humans onboarding rather than having to create any videos or the like.
Right. Yeah. Chris?
I was going to say the thing about the open mics is you have a very what's the word I'm looking for? Disciplined crowd that you pull up on stage. So we're very good about, keeping mics off. And it's so annoying when you hear, babies crying and dishes being made. And
yeah. And I also don't do anything else while I'm doing Clubhouse. So when we do our Clubhouse, I think there's a big value when you do any show to be 100% present, and so I don't do anything else. I don't read. As many of you have tried to text me or Discord me to tell me something's wrong, I don't look at Discord or text or email or anything else while I'm doing the show. And I think that when people do that, I think it also degrades. You can't process both things at the same time, so it creates lots of little commas, in your presentation. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, there is one third-party app that I can't find the name of it. I was just Googling for it, but it adds a bunch of features to Clubhouse, and the API, I guess, is open enough where there is an app community forming now over this. And I really want to get a handle on what Leo was talking about to figure out how do you really do a Clubhouse broadcast and stay within the rules. It's real tricky because
I think you go the other direction. I mean, I'm going the other direction. So I'm not trying to bring people in. I'm going to be going from Zoom to Clubhouse, but I'm also going to be going from Zoom like over this month. I'm streaming to YouTube again, but I'll start streaming to a wider range of things soon. And my goal is that I'm going to be going from from our event to YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and then I'll add other, we'll keep on adding things to that, to that process. Go ahead, Leo.
So a negative answer, not great, but I've looked at both Canva and Relay that, which are the two quite common that people use. Neither of them have got templates yet for Clubhouse. I was expecting they would, but they don't. But in your point to this is that the audio, this show is really good for audio because it's just built what we have apart from all watching Guy's 4K screen, which he just basically showed because he wants us to all be jealous. There's not much else that we have to look at, Yep.
Let's go to the next question.
Moving on, Maggie Barton Baird of Edmonton, Canada says, has anyone found a good microphone that can go right into your phone for Clubhouse? Bonus point if it has headphones too.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey.
So yeah, a lot of microphones that initiate the USB 2.0 standard should be able to, with an adapter, go right into your phone. I'm a big fan of IK Multimedia.
So
this is
the IK,
iRig.
I can tell you the IK stuff doesn't work as soon as you turn on to talk. Like, so we've already done tests with the IK Multimedia because it doesn't identify it as a standard phone connection. So if what we found, have you gotten the iRig to work, Leo? Because we haven't.
You haven't. There's lots of YouTube videos saying this works. I bought it before I moved house.
Is it going to the headphone jack? No, it goes into the headphone jack, right?
It goes into the it's got
So if it goes into the headphone jack, it works. If it goes into the USB, it does not. So the iRig stuff, any iRig that goes through Lightning, it gets defeated immediately. Like, so I think Bill, you had that experience, right?
I did.
Yeah. So it's basically what happens is that an audio software can look for other audio devices. Clubhouse very much looks for a phone connection. And so there are two options. One is a headphone jack. Now, if you do Lightning, you can go through, I have it around here somewhere, but an adapter, the Lightning to TRRS adapter. You can go through that, and then it's an analog connection, and it'll go, oh, that's a headset. I'll let you do that. And I believe that this is a security feature that they're trying to implement so that you can't do exactly what we're trying to do. I think that's the idea. So it is, now the second one that Grant and I have found that works most of the time is the Audinate Bluetooth connection. So Audinate has Bluetooth to Dante. Now this is not going to go for Maggie. This is not going to go directly in. There's a little bit of work here, but that is the cleanest connection, which is now I can put my PR40 and just drive it straight into Clubhouse. That is so that will work. As far as mics that are directly in one of the highest quality ones that we found just for regular phone connections have been the Parrot 450, the whatever 450, and that's a Bluetooth headset with a mic that comes out. That's Bluetooth. For wired, the highest quality that I found with all the headsets, just standard headsets that I've used, have been the Etymotics iPhone. It's like something 3. It's like $150 or whatever, and it has been the right mix of intelligibility and everything else in the distance to your mouth and so on and so forth. I've gone through a lot of them. After that, you get into interfaces. So the iRig interface that Leo was talking about that again goes to TRRS, or there are Ceramonic makes a bunch of stuff that goes into and we've used those for years, that are XLR in to the TRRS, and those things, a lot of those will work. But you have to be careful of the USB ones because they get shut off. They work when you're in there, and then as soon as you go to talk, they go, nope, I can't do that. Bill?
Yeah, that's the point I was making. Everything seems like it's working great, and you think, I've got this thing nailed, and then you go on stage and it all just suddenly fails.
Yep,
and so
work, yeah.
It's very weird.
Yep. Leo, you're showing.
Yeah, this is exactly the point that Bill's saying. If you try one of these ones where you've got a USB in to the Lightning, as soon as you go on stage, you just lose.
It has to look like
audio, and
it has to look like
yourself.
a basic headset. You have to look like a basic headset going in, or it won't see it. And this is a problem.
I mean, the very simplest thing could be just straightforward Bluetooth, because if you connect your phone up, these Bose Bluetooth headphones work perfectly.
Right.
Well, they work, but they sound awful because the mic is rubbish.
So there's a couple of places to look that I'm going to be doing more research in. Obviously, the Audinate is the one that I like the best because I have a Dante system that it already supports. But there's also the Ceramonic, which I think I actually have in one of my drawers, and then you have the iRig that goes into the headphone jack, as well as there's a variety of JK Audio stuff that is another option. That does Bluetooth and then goes into the phone. So looks like the phone, but goes into XLR. So those are a couple options, but it has to look like a headset. It cannot look like an audio device. Clubhouse will just bypass it. Next question.
Moving on to Charles Klein's question from New York City. Hi, Charles. As Clubhouse evolves, what does the panel think it will develop into?
I think the clubs are interesting. I think that the clubs are something that I don't understand them yet, but I think that I think you can move to a subscription service pretty quickly, and where people could be, paying to be part of that group. I think that part of it's seeing if there's enough quality content to do that. But I could see how people could create a micro payment of $1 a month, or you pay everyone pays a subscription to Clubhouse, and then you get to watch all the shows, and the shows kind of work in the, based on the percentage of hours of, so you can have a system where we all pay $8 a month to be part of Clubhouse, and like Medium. And inside of that, you look at the number of page views and your percentage of the total page views across the world, and then you get that percentage of some cut that is created by a pool, and that kind of thing. Go ahead, Bill, and then Paul.
I'm just looking back over the course of my career. So it was radio first, and then we went into podcasting, and that aggregated ears. And now Clubhouse on the internet is aggregating ears. If you can assemble huge amounts of brains some way so that you engage them over the course of time, that does build value. So all these things that we're talking about are ways to slice out and monetize that. But there may be a solid future for Clubhouse if they can figure out that pathway to aggregate a large audience, understand that audience, and do something with it. I would hate to see it go down the traditional advertising model. I don't think that's going to happen, and I hope not, because the annoying injection of commercial messages into anything is just horrible, and we should be able to get past that. But I like this idea of micropayments or micro subscriptions that are so small because the audience is so big.
And the read-ins, the read-ins have been in podcasting have been always proven to be more effective than most other advertising. So just someone, like Leo talking about things that within Twit or something like that has been pretty effective at doing that within a radio environment. But I do think that if broadcasters aren't terrified of the trend, they should be. Yeah. This is because what's happening is you're having these what's considered huge on Clubhouse is 3,000 or 4,000 people. A broadcaster would never, if 3,000 or 4,000 people watched a broadcast, they would never do it again. Like they're like, oh, that was a failure. Let's move on. That was a horrible pilot. We only had 300,000 people watch it. And so it's living in this world of, if you think about the dinosaurs and all the little mammals, they're up there not being able, they're not gonna be able to find enough food because all these little animals are all gonna, eat up all the food before, as a mass. So that's the real challenge is in that sense. Leo, and then Paul, and then Chris.
So where do I see it going? Really, I see this as worldwide satellite radio. The ability to be listening to things that you used to be able to listen to only in one country, you can be listened to around the world. On the negative side, with Clubhouse, it's still really only two people in a conversation. The minute that you have 3 or 4 people open their mics up on Clubhouse, like anything else, you can't compute it in your head. You can't. It doesn't work, and the conversations drift.
Well, without a host throwing the ball, like that is the thing that makes a lot of these work, is someone throwing it. And I do think that the panel needs to be, our panel is very unusual because we've created a structure that allows it to get bigger. Paul?
Yeah, I think earlier you were talking about monetizing it, and what's the holy grail on Clubhouse? The thing about Clubhouse is that it's evanescent. You go into a club, you meet, and it goes away. There's no record of it. So if you want to monetize it, offer the option to push it out to other places or record it. That's the one thing you can't do, and that keeps you from publishing content on Clubhouse. Anything you do on Clubhouse is going to vanish, go away. It's a one-shot deal.
Yeah, I don't know. Chris, and then we'll move on.
I yield my time.
Okay, next question.
Stuart Fairweather, Melbourne, Australia, says, what options are there for Clubhouse on non-Apple platforms right now?
Currently, none.
None.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, there was a group of people that bootlegged a Android solution, and they had it working. They had Clubhouse on Android, but Clubhouse shut them down. It's exactly what probably Leo's raising his hand about right now to talk about is the fact that it was a breach.
Go ahead, Leo.
Go ahead,
Leo,
Leo.
and then Stuart.
So there is another app out there that I've come across called Stereo, which you may or may not be able to hear me. Yeah, so it's coming out. I'm going to have to shut it down. And I can't stop it now. That's out there.
It's part of the business model.
Yeah.
It's
there
a
you go.
business model.
Can't close it. So there's another app called Stereo. Why? I don't think they've gone to Apple because they're being exclusive snobbery. It's just because it's a much easier platform to develop on, because all the limitations, how many handsets, all the types of handsets, and particularly going back to the point that you mentioned earlier, Alex, there isn't this situation where it's like, look, you can hijack it to change the way that you're recording, which you'd find difficult on an iPhone. When on Android, it's like literally you're just going to open the gates.
Yeah. Go ahead, Stuart.
Well, it pretty much sounds the death knell for the app straight off the bat then, doesn't it? If they're excluding the majority of people from using it, that's a barrier to access, the same as Final Cut being a barrier to access compared to Resolve, or anything that is Windows only or anything that's Apple only. These are the wrong sorts of decisions if you want the largest possible client base.
No, the question is the size versus...
If you shut people out, it's as bad as shutting people out based on whether they're poor or not.
Well, there's a value to, I have a feeling that they're doing it because it's easier to do it that way. And a lot of app developers develop stuff on the iPhone before they roll over to Android. And it's not that they're never going there. It's just that it's easier. It's an easier environment and more controlled environment to build in. And from a pure monetary perspective, iPhone users are more valuable than Android users. I mean, that's not really even a controversial thing right now. So every iPhone user, represents 4 or 5 Android users from a revenue perspective. And so they, there's not, if you talk to app developers privately, they usually won't talk about it publicly. They'll just flat out say there's just no money in Android unless you're going to advertise. Like if you're not going to do an advertising model, then there's no money to do it there. And they just kind of, If they have an advertising model, then it might make sense. But if they don't, they just don't bother, you know. And the only reason they do it is to protect. The only reason they eventually go to Android is to protect their space. To your point, Stuart. But they don't start there because they'd have to support 2 platforms. They're a small startup, and they pick the one that is going to generate the most return. And a lot of them end up getting bought before they have to port. Like that's kind of the game, is you get a bunch of funding and you get bought before you actually have to do the work, and then somebody else has to do it. And usually the founders are now, you know, in Tahiti drinking you know, rum. Leo and then Bill.
You literally hit it. We've created a proof of concept. We've built it on this. We now want $1 billion and a large island in somewhere. Now take it off our hands and then put it to Android.
Yeah, Bill and then Chris.
And that is a natural thing to want. You know, we all imagine these things. Oh, if I get in on the ground floor, it can go huge and change my entire life in a giant way. I'm equally as interested in the smaller, more geo-centric models like Nextdoor, where people are organizing locally as opposed to nationally or internationally or globally. I think there's room in both spaces to work. And I wonder if the algorithms and the processes of this communication things that we're trying to apply to global things can also be applied to affinity groups in a way that isn't quite so. I just want to expand. I just want to expand.
But beyond the expansion, I think that what I like about the fact that something's global is the fact that we're able to build these affinity groups without being constrained by geographic limitations.
Wholly agree with you.
So I have to admit that I don't find my neighbors that interesting. So you know, like, so I don't. I mean, I'm just not that interested in them.
I guess my point
there's a couple
is
of them are. Elmo is really cool, and there's a couple of them that. But then, and I've had other ones that are very interesting that I pay a lot of attention to. But I don't want to try to dig through to find other people that want to talk about AV in Novato, California. What I love is the fact that I've got people that I can attract just the right people all over the world, and I think that we're going to continue to become more and more global citizens. Because of this connection that on a given day, just the panel in this talk represents 3 to 4 continents. I think it's 3 or 4 today.
I wholly agree with you, Alex, but that's not my point. My point is that I want that slice to not have to grow. I want that affinity group to be global and accessible to everybody, but it doesn't have to be gigantic. And that's what I hate about I need to get a big audience.
But the thing is that well, and that's what we've done pretty effectively here is we have a really high quality audience because we're not trying to expand it, at least for now. But we're not trying to. I'm never interested in a giant audience. What I'm interested in is a really great audience. And
exactly.
But the thing is that. But I don't know if that's geographic as much as it is. You just want to constantly create an environment that keeps on attracting the people and building an environment where for people that it doesn't work for, they don't want to stay. And the people who does work for, they do want to stay.
Looks at a smaller group with an affinity thing, whether it's a neighborhood or a particular slice of the tech industry. You're not trying to grow gigantic. You're trying to grow better.
I think the problem with Nextdoor, I track Nextdoor. It's my neighbors, so I'm on it. And I track. It makes me less interested in my neighbors than it did before. Like I was like, oh, I should have these people over. And now I'm like, I should not have these people over. So I think that's the issue with it, with Nextdoor is that
we found exactly the opposite during the pandemic and during the lockdown. The local school was on Nextdoor a lot, saying that there's a circumstance over here where they need help and things like that. And you were able to locally act.
I will admit that I live in Marin County, which is a county of Karens. It's like Karen Wood and Karen this and Karen that. And so I'm just constantly struck with these people are crazy. Anyway, Leo and then Sky real quick, and then we'll move on to the next question.
Marin is, Nextdoor is global. It's the one place to tell the whole world you've lost your cat. That's all we have.
We just had a long
string. All we
of
have in Nextdoor. It's just telling you about us. Okay. Going back to Clubhouse, the thing that is different, I found, is I found that there definitely is a group of people on it. I'm trying to think of the right terms, but the social economic grouping on Clubhouse is quite interesting. You notice that across the world is very similar. And so it is attracting a certain group of people at the moment. It may go back to where you were saying about who has the iPhones.
Well, yeah, exactly. It defines people first that have iPhones. That narrows that group really quickly. But I'm also thinking about the word cloud was as a place of concept of a lot of servers, a lot of hard drives. Well, it's all it is. It's a closet full of hard drives, but in marketing speak, it's the cloud. And our origin is broadcast, and what we're starting to see now is narrowcasting. So I'm learning about the verbiage of narrowcasting and affinity groups that is said about 5 times now.
I strongly think that narrowcasting is the end of broadcasting. Like it is, like we're gonna get big events that we're gonna watch that are on Apple TV and Netflix and a handful of other locations where we get the high value, really expensive content. But a lot of the other, it's the content in between, the local news stations, the weird little cable stations, the epics of the world. Those are not going to survive. Because we're just not gonna have time to watch them because we're actually watching or listening to things that we're actually interested in. They don't have to hit a broad market anymore. They just hit exactly what we want.
But what keeps us out of echo chambers? Only listening to the only thing that we want to hear. Oh, Jeff hadn't thought about that.
No, it's
echo chambers is bad.
Maybe. But
depends on what you're echoing.
In the end, it's just not that interesting if everybody's the same.
That's my question. That's my question.
But then they'll die on their own. They'll die on their own. Echo chambers just get boring. But the thing that makes ours interesting is that it's so diverse, globally diverse, socially. There's all these diversities that are here. But that is but the other ones, the ones that are monocultures tend to just not be interesting after a while. You run out of things to talk about. Next question. We're running out of time.
Jeff Greenberg is in from Philadelphia and the panel with, I want to create a Clubhouse club that I can invite a select group of people to check their emails through something like perhaps Eventbrite. Is there a way to do that and have a private URL for the Clubhouse?
Pick me.
Well, I think the club is invite only, right? Once we have a club, we can invite people into that club. I think that's how the club works. I believe.
The struggle is purely, I have a group of people that I have emails for. I don't want to have to track them down via Clubhouse. I'd rather go, hey, we're all in this group together. Click on this link, go to Eventbrite, register. We know that you're part of this group. Come on in. And it just may be too early to have this conversation.
I mean, it's anybody in your phone book. So, I mean, that's
everybody in my phone book.
It's everybody in your phone book. But I mean, it's anybody, but finding them in that phone book is the only challenge. They just have to be in your phone book.
Bunch of them that aren't in my phone book, but I'm with like a Facebook group or and I want to go, hey, register here. You don't have a Clubhouse invite? I'll get you.
Oh, I think that'll come. I think that it's just not here yet. I think that they're constraining the ability for people to get in. To those of us who are gullible enough to give them access to our address book. I did it. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry to all of you that are already in my address book. It's a horrible. That's my biggest complaint about Clubhouse is the way that they've executed that process. Just feels really gooey, and I think that it will be one of the things that really damages them over time if they don't change it. And I think they will.
It's really dirty.
It's really dirty. Like it's a horrible trend. Like I did it for Clubhouse, and once I did it because I really want to get ahead of it, I probably will never do what I did to Clubhouse again. Like that model of you have to be in their address book and then they have to do this thing. I'm never doing. After I did it a couple of times, like after I signed up. And I started adding people to and I was just like, nope, I'm not gonna do this again. I'm not gonna do it again. Like I'm not gonna invite any more people. Like I was really grossed out by the way that they did that. Go ahead, Leo.
Yeah, I mean there's 110 people who also use the same taxi firm that I use, and 136 who go to my local Nando's. So,
right.
Because it just tells you how many.
So it's super gross. Like that's the thing that I mean as a social media person, you kind of have to know it, and I kind of felt like I needed to do it. To figure out what's going on, but it's gross. Next question.
Dan Huber, Erie, Pennsylvania. Noticed the new Clubhouse update that there is some limited sharing. I believe it's only links. Has anybody tried it?
I haven't tried it. I don't know what don't know what that sharing process is. It might be the evolution from the grossness that we just talked about. Next question.
Talak Lopez Waterman says, why is so much Clubhouse about Bitcoin? Oh gosh.
I think it's just the culture. It's the same culture that's jumping onto this is the same culture that is jumping onto that has jumped onto Bitcoin. Some of them made a lot of money on Bitcoin. And they're happy to tell you that they started when it was 10 cents. And so I think that, if you're doing Bitcoin, the value of any monetary system is a conversation. So you want to keep on talking about it because that's how you keep it valuable. So I think that it's a market that's always interested in talking about it, because if you stop talking about it and you stop thinking it's valuable, it will go down, just like the US dollar. It's no different. Next question.
Stan Chan of Roseville says, iRig Pro with Lightning and USB-C works with the latest Clubhouse release, but it's a bit buggy. I wonder if that buggy is the problem we were talking about earlier, where it seems like it's working just fine, and then you go on stage and something, and suddenly it doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, what we found is it works fine until you try to talk. so it'll work absolutely perfectly. So the bugginess that you may be referring to is that it works perfectly until you open up the mic, and then it goes, nope, can't do that. So that's and I believe that that's there on purpose to limit. It's the same reason Instagram doesn't let you technically RTMP stream into it, is to keep everybody on the same playing field, so that people like me don't put professional mics. Like if we all had Hiles and we all had the Audinate and we all went in, our show would sound way better. And then it creates, basically what it does is it creates an expectation inflation that some shows look a lot. What happens is that when some shows suddenly look way better, people start looking at the other shows badly, and they'll stop listening to them because they realize the delta between the two. So if you put out shows that are really, really good, and I think you can probably notice it here, we are probably more judgmental about other Zoom meetings that we go into because we're in this meeting all the time, right? So that is the effect that a lot of us have over time. Jeff, you've only been here once. But as you do this over and over and over again, we get used to it sounding really good, being well organized, people being well lit, people being, and you get used to it. And then you go to other meetings and you're like, who are all these jokers? That starts to build up. In the same way, if people start creating lots of really high quality shows, I mean, people got away with a lot at the beginning of YouTube. Now you don't. It's the biggest YouTubers are now shooting in 4K. They're, it looks great. It's really tightly edited. It's, and there's not that much that succeeds that isn't. And same thing with TikTok. TikTok used to be like, people just throw things up. I've got a crazy idea and I'll do it with my phone. And now you watch the TikToks and they are super tight, and well organized and tight, and that's the nature of things. But what a lot of platforms try to do is to limit the speed at which that happens, because you'll cut a lot of people out. Like we have a lot of people that won't join our panel because they look at the rest of the mics and they go, oh, I don't, the rest of the folks that are here, and they go, oh, I have to be ready for it. And that's what they're trying to avoid, is people feeling like they can't get in because they don't have the right tools, or they don't look like everybody else, and that's the challenge that they're trying to push back, I think. Next question.
Courtney Gooden, our normal panelist from Hollywood, says, can you use a Series 4 iPad mini to go into Clubhouse over Wi-Fi, or does it need iPhone to call in?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yep, you can. iPad mini works on Wi-Fi, no issues.
There you go. Next question.
Stuart Fairweather, Melbourne, Australia, says, how do people manage the time sharing of how to be on so many apps? There are too many of these platforms, and there are too many e-fluencers.
Can we get Paul to answer that one?
E-fluencers.
No, that is such a great effluencers.
Oh, you're right. It is effluencers. That's like effluent.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. I'll have to. We have to put that out on Twitter. Like we have to. Like that is such a. Is that already a thing?
Trademark that now. That's just something I added to the way it was described months ago, and it's like, because it just gives me that, and I can't use the word because clean show.
Yeah. It's such a great word.
I'm an effluencer.
Yeah, that's that's so great. All right.
I send out a lot of effluent.
Yeah. That was right up there. I tried to coin a word the other week and it went off like a lead balloon. Contentration. When you're paying attention to, when you're just watching TikTok and ignoring everything, it's contentration. All right, next question.
Stuart is back with the last comment of the show with, for the end of the show, here's the link for the drone video Alex mentioned at the top of the show. It's a good pilot with a Cinewhoop quadcopter. So
can anyone show that? Can anyone like play it out? I'm not ready. I'm not set up to play it out.
Guy
today.
looks like he's desperately keyboarding away, trying to get it up on his screen so he can share.
Fenwick will get it.
Fenwick got it.
Oh, there we go. Fenwick got it.
Yeah, I should point out the other link there is to Nurk FPV, who has also done this sort of stuff. The one linked in the in Mucana now is now the one where he flies under a moving train.
Yeah. What I will say is
calling
that
time lapse.
Well, it's really
this is just a
the thing that
this is just a Cinewhoop. It's nothing special.
what's a
Nurk
what's a
FPV and Mr. Steele do much more smaller gaps with theirs.
But there, what's crazy is that everybody's
bounced the floor
rehearsed.
there, by
Like
the way.
everybody, it's everybody's rehearsed. It's not just that they're doing it. It's that they're like they've really like sorted out all the like that's what I love about it is that
we just saw the shadow of it.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, it's a
Cinewhoop. It's about 6 inches long, 3.5 wide, and about 2 high.
It's just such a great.
And about 150,000 hours of pilot training.
Yes.
I mean,
so
it's
if I can, I was talking with Thomas Grove Carter,
right,
and he edits some pretty high end stuff for certain fruit companies. If you don't know
come
him.
on, I'm not buying this shot.
No. What I'm saying is, Thomas was telling me about a piece that he cut for a fruit company where it was a drone shot that went through a window, came into the room, and right into the logo on the back of the fruit company iPhone. And it would, he said it was really good. It was a really good pilot, but they ended up doing a digital morph between the drone shot outside the building to a Steadicam inside the building, and it's seamless.
He had me believing
this
that
is
was
faked.
a single shot until he ran into the pins, and then the end shot after the crash was a well composed with the pin at the exact right angle. I'm not buying that.
Bill, I will still say that that's real, because if you have a look, if you back it up a bit, you can actually see one person is timed to bowl and knock over the pins as the Cinewhoop is flying.
No. It's when the drone
alley.
itself knocks over the pins at the last
No, it
shot.
doesn't knock over. The ball knocks them over.
That last shot.
Yep. Watch.
Here's
There's a
where
guy
you
timed
see
to
the
bowl.
shadow,
It goes
right?
over his.
There.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Actually,
That's
if
the
you can back
shadow.
that up, I can probably tell you which one that is, because that looked like it
I don't
had
think I could
ducks,
pause it,
which means
on time.
it's probably a Shen Drones Cinewhoop.
a Shen drones.
Yep. And I'll have a look, see if I can find.
That looks like a relatively
period and
inexpensive
comma.
one.
The period and
Really?
comma will take
Thank
you
you.
forward frame at a time.
Thank you, Jeff.
Right, bang, right there on the back of the shirt.
I just
There's
learned
the
something.
shadow.
Period and comma.
Nailed it.
Jeff Greenberg for the win.
Jeff Greenberg, like that's a new one for me. I was
love
like,
you.
I was
Here,
like, what?
here are the ones.
Period and comma.
Here are the ones.
Tag
Here's
now.
the ones you want to
I'm
know for
putting
YouTube.
a link into Mucana, and that is an image file of a Shen Drone Cinewhoop.
JKLK pauses. Oh, go ahead.
Wait. Go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead, Jeff. What were you gonna say?
JKL, J and L go forward, backwards 10 seconds. K pauses, obviously. Arrow keys are 5 frames forward, 5 frames back, comma, and period is frame forward, frame back. And then the numbers 1 through 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90% on YouTube. Way faster way to go through your videos.
Yeah.
Nerd.
That's awesome.
This is what happens when we run out of questions early.
No. It was something we wanted to get to. We
Okay,
wanted
wait a
to,
second. Fenwick's got the last shot, the money shot here at the end. Close the video. So you're saying
He
that
could've just crashed
that and the white flash frame is post
It's
somehow.
a GoPro.
Back
No, it's
in.
just
But
a-
watch what happens, right? Now we're in just general
I'm
folder
going
roll.
backwards. So
No,
there he is
go-
hitting the balls, I think. And
Hitting the
then
pins.
here is an edit.
Right.
between
It's
that
got to be a
frame
cut.
and that frame. And this is just
And then watch how lovely the last shot is framed with the pin at exactly a nice angle. You never get that lucky.
I
Okay,
get
we're
that.
still coming there. Wait a second. No, we're still
No.
establishing. Here comes
It's still
the
falling.
beauty
It's just
pin
in the
shot.
mechanism.
And keep going.
Yep, just in the mechanism.
And look at the composition of that shot. That
That's not
shot.
that good.
You
Yep.
know, you got
Sometimes you
leading,
get that
you got
lucky.
leading lines pulling you to the bright light. Oh, come on.
Nah.
Seriously, sometimes you get that lucky. And don't
Lucky.
forget that we're not looking at a regular camera view. We're looking at a 2.8 millimeter lens or the like. That is such a wide angle. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm still saying after that.
I would say
that
if nothing
flash
else,
frame
All right.
stuff, it's
the last
fun.
2 hours was worth it for period
It's a
and
cut.
comma. Thank you, Jeff.
Period,
there you
comma, period, and
Oh, yeah.
comma. All right. Hey, thanks everybody, and it's great to see a lot of you. Jeff, welcome to the group. Hopefully, you'll join us more often in between your busy schedule. It's great to have you here, and so that's great. And thanks to the panel for another great conversation. Thank you to to all the attendees for keeping this going as the producers, continuing to guide our content forward. Now we're going to jump in. Remember that there's nothing tonight. Just like there's nothing tonight. My wife now walks in as she sees me getting ready for an evening thing. She's like, but there will be. I am going to get away with it tomorrow night. So we'll do 7:00. It will be another evening one, and then right now we're going to jump into the post show. See you there.